Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so glad you're joining us today because we've got something genuinely fascinating to unpack. We're going to look at how a simple, everyday item, a chicken pot pie, actually reveals some massive shifts in our modern food systems, our regulatory frameworks, and even the very nature of modern work culture. I know it sounds like a bit of a stretch, but stick with me. By the end of this explainer, the connection is absolutely going to make sense.
Get this, 75%. According to our source material, 75% of America's food is convenience food. Now, if you're sitting there right now thinking about your own dinner plans tonight, or maybe those frozen meals tucked away in your freezer, don't worry, you are incredibly validated here. It's just the staggering paradox of our time. We consume convenience food at a massive, unprecedented scale, yet somehow we've never been more obsessed with the idea of cooking.
So here is our roadmap for exploring this reality today. We'll start with the modern convenience paradox, dive into pot pie economics, uncover a hidden legal barrier, look at America's aging farm crisis, and then bring it all together with the tactile work revolution.
All right, Section 1, the modern convenience paradox, cooking shows versus reality.
We really need to look at the irony of our modern relationship with the kitchen and why simply telling people to just cook from scratch honestly isn't an effective or realistic solution anymore. As the source notes, never has a culture been so techno-sophisticated and gadgetized in our kitchens, but not used it. Think about it for a second. We've got air fryers, sous vide machines, instant pots. We binge-watch cooking shows for hours on end. But the source points out a pretty harsh cultural reality. The average person is actually so far removed from daily food prep that asking them to, say, grab a whole butternut squash, peel it, and cook it entirely from scratch, it can actually feel a bit offensive. People simply don't have the time, or in a lot of cases the foundational skills, like literally just knowing how to boil an egg. The demand for convenience is already baked in. So the real question becomes, how do we get better convenience food?
Which brings us to Section 2, the pot pie economics, the value-add genius.
Instead of fighting this huge cultural demand for convenience, the source outlines an absolutely brilliant economic solution using premium, farm-made convenience foods. Let's walk step by step through this astonishing value-add math. Imagine an entrepreneurial farmer. Step 1, they raise a high-quality, pastured chicken. Now, as a raw commodity, that single chicken might sell for about $20. But in Step 2, they prep and bake that chicken into high-quality, unadulterated chicken pot pies. We're talking real convenience food, made without the synthetic dyes or preservatives. Then, Step 3, by selling those pot pies directly to consumers, that single $20 chicken is suddenly transformed into $200 worth of premium meals. Actually, think about that. That's a tenfold increase in value just by cooking it for the busy consumer.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when you scale that math up. $240,000. Our source lays out a scenario where a farmer raises 1,200 meat chickens on just 2 acres of pasture, moving them every single day. If they transform those 1,200 chickens into premium pot pies and sell them directly to their neighbors as convenience food, they generate a massive $240,000. This proves a really powerful economic thesis. A family could genuinely make a phenomenal living wage on just 2 acres, simply by selling real convenience food straight out of their home kitchen.
So moving on to Section 3, the hidden legal barrier, the debate over access and safety. Now, you might be wondering, if the math is so good, why isn't literally every farmer doing this? Well, we have to look at the intense regulatory roadblocks preventing this direct farm-to-consumer economic model from really flourishing. The source argues there's a glaring regulatory hypocrisy at play here. Let's say a farmer makes a homemade pot pie and gives it away to a neighbor or a friend to feed their kids. That is perfectly legal and deemed completely safe. But the very second money changes hands, if they sell that exact same pot pie, it suddenly transforms into an illegal, legally hazardous substance that can literally land the farmer in court. And the source points out a fascinating detail. Nobody gets taken to court for buying this food, only the farmer for selling it. Now, to keep things completely objective here, let's look at the full debate. Authorities have a very valid counterargument. Regulations exist to ensure clean kitchens, prevent contamination, and maintain broad food safety. I mean, we all want safe food, right? However, the source's rebuttal is that we should solve this by limiting these sales to direct transactions between consenting adults. They argue that choosing your own body's fuel is a fundamental human right. Ultimately, the source claims that these strict prohibitions aren't really just about safety, but are actually a mechanism for controlling market access and keeping these small entrepreneurial farmers entirely out of the grocery game.
Let's shift gears a bit. Section 4, America's Aging Farm Crisis, a Looming Equity Transfer.
These micro-level legal bottlenecks we just talked about, they actually feed directly into a massive, macro-level demographic cliff facing American agriculture right now. The average American farmer is currently 60 years old. Over the next 15 years, as these older farmers age out, a staggering 50% of all U.S. agricultural equity is going to change hands. To put that into perspective, the source highlights that an equity transfer of this massive size has historically only happened during times of conquest. But here's the problem. Young people are watching their parents work incredibly hard in the industrial farming system, barely scraping by, and they just don't want to take on that struggle. If young people can't get into the market because of regulatory roadblocks, the older generation literally can't get out.
And that leads us to Section 5, the tactile work revolution, leaving the cubicle. Despite all these hurdles, there is a fascinating emotional and cultural shift happening. A whole new generation is looking at regenerative, entrepreneurial farming not just for the health of the soil, but for deep personal meaning. We're calling this the tactile work revolution. The source details a highly formal farm apprenticeship program that recently had 135 applicants for just 11 spots. And here's the kicker. These aren't people who grew up on farms. These applicants are often sharp, highly articulate, college-educated professionals. They're folks who are 5 or 6 years into their corporate, Dilbert cubicle careers, completely burned out by screens and driven by a deep, powerful yearning to do something visceral and physical. They want to leave the corporate headquarters behind and go run a zero-turn mower.
To really let the emotion of this land, the source shares an incredible anecdote about an apprentice who came from the belly of the beast, working as a banker at Chase Manhattan in New York. After spending a single day physically building a portable wooden chicken shelter with a team, using hammers, nails, and screws, he came in for dinner visibly moved. He was almost in tears. He explained that his whole career had been building financial skeletons in cyberspace, pushing a button and watching his work just disappear. But after a day of manual labor, he said, "Tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and go out there and it's still going to be there." This just perfectly contrasts our modern reality. In cyberspace work, we're building invisible structures, pushing buttons and watching our efforts disappear into the ether. It can lead to this profound sense of alienation where nothing really feels like it has substance anymore. But in tactile work, pounding nails, cutting boards, you create physical permanence. It's a visceral encounter with life that leaves you physically exhausted, sure, but emotionally fulfilled because you actually created something real with your own 2 hands.
The source beautifully connects this desire for physical work to a much broader human need to reconnect with the natural world. They share a story of someone leaving New York City for a rural ranch. Sitting out by a dying campfire, miles away from all the city light pollution, they looked up at the moon and the stars, things entirely not created by mankind, and realized just how small we truly are. It's really about experiencing the visceral realities of life, seeing the animals, understanding how nature works firsthand, and feeling the profound satisfaction of physical exhaustion at the end of a hard day's work.
So I want to end with this provocative question for you to consider today. Are we losing our connection to the physical world? And is tactile work the key to reclaiming our meaning? From the irony of our gadgetized kitchens to the economic genius of a farm-fresh chicken pot pie, right down to a burnt-out banker finding peace in building a simple wooden shelter, it all points to a deep human craving for the tangible. Think about your own career for a second and your daily reliance on convenience. What is the true value of creating something real with your own hands? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this sparks some curiosity, and I encourage you to keep questioning the physical reality of the world around you.